Well, for the ancient Greeks, I meant to start with this before I jumped right into Hinduism, but they believed in a tripartite soul.
Okay.
You had the logos, which was like reason, analytical reason, logic. You had the cardia, which was the heart, passions,
Okay.
desire. And that's kind of almost like that Harry Haller and the wolf, right?
Yeah.
The logos versus the cardia, or Apollo versus Dionysius, in Nietzsche's view. But then they believed there was a higher part of the soul called the Noose.
Yes.
And that was like first principles.
Hey, welcome to another episode of the Selfish Show. And on this show, we have my favorite gnome, Dark Water Hermit, Santa Claus for some people, for some kids. Fred Blackburn, thanks for being on the show, my friend.
So good to see you.
And then we could just look at each other. We don't need to And so I asked Fred to be on the show because I wanted to talk about self. And if there was someone that I know that has I was going to say fully orbed understanding of the self, or multiple, a good understanding of multiple versions of what the self means, it's you. So yeah, man, that's what we're going to talk about today. But before we get into that, my friend, can you just tell us a little bit about yourself? Why you're the Dark Water Hermit, or Fred of the Forest?
Who is myself?
Yeah.
I can tell you about some of my roles and personas, but I can't necessarily tell you about myself.
Well, tell us a little bit tell us about your roles then.
Well, I love the Hindu concept, but one of my friends who was into Eastern philosophy and religion said, that's not a Hindu concept, Fred, you made that up yourself. So whether it's from the umbrella Hindu tradition or whether my own application, I call it the 1,000-petaled lotus of the heart.
Okay.
And your true self is inside all those petals, but each petal is like a role or a relationship or that
persona,
right? But it's not you. It's something you do or that you're related to, but it's not the essence of who you are.
Right.
And so the deconstruction process is, you're like, I'm a son, I'm a brother, I'm an uncle, I'm a professor, I'm American, I'm a Californian.
Yeah.
All of these, I'm a gnome, I'm a tree lover. But when you peel back that last layer, it's like, who do you see inside? Now, for the Hindu, they believe you see Atman, which is God within. And for the Christian, hopefully you're seeing Jesus, God within.
Right.
If you're a Buddhist, you see nothing, but their nothing is everything. But after years of deconstructing and trying to look at everything from a materialist perspective, where we have no self, we have a physical material body.
Right.
When that's gone, it's gone. But for those who believe in a metaphysical self and that this body is like a vehicle, and Plato talks about that, Paul talks about that, or like a garment we're going to take off. That's what I'm interested in. What is that essential self that resides in the body, but it's not the body? It's connected profoundly and intimately. Like if I stub my toe, I'm not like, oh, that poor toe stubbed. It's like, ow,
right,
I hurt myself. But it's not really myself, but I'm so intimately connected to it.
So do you have a concept for a true or false self? Not really.
I do not believe we are in the epistemic position to know ourselves. And what I mean by that, epistemology is theory of knowledge. Because we are subjective individuals, we use ourself to perceive other selves and things.
But not ours.
But I think it's like our eye. We use our eye to see everything, but you can't pull your eye out to look at your own eye. And so the closest I think we can get, it's one of the reasons I love having friends and even enemies. It's because they act like mirrors
to see yourself.
Yes. I don't know if you ever heard of the Joe Hardy window.
Johari window, yeah.
Yeah. And it's like that.
Joe and Harry.
It's like we have the window that we show to other people.
Mm-hmm.
We have the window that we know about ourselves that other people don't know, right? We have the window that other people know about us that we can't see in ourselves.
Yeah.
But then that fourth window, they don't call it this, but I would say that's our true self. But the one we don't know, other people don't know, only God.
Can you know that fourth self?
I don't believe so.
But like as you grow into a certain role, you can't.
Because I can't
Teach that. I teach you can.
I can't get pull myself out to observe myself. I think the only time I'm going to actually know my true self, and I'm coming from a Christian perspective here, is in Revelation. It talks about we're going to be given a white stone with our true name written. And I think that's the first time I will ever know who Fred actually is. And I'll be like, oh. And I hope it's a nice name because Jesus gave us a pretty great nickname called Peter a Stone. And I don't know that it was because he was solid. It might have been because of stuff. And remember what he called James and John? The sons of thunder.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
And I don't know if it's because they partied a lot or it's because they were really aggressive. But I hope Jesus gives me a nice name and not.
You don't mind being Fred of the Forest or the Dark Water Hermit.
Those are Petals. It's not my true.
Yeah, but it's what we see.
Sure.
It's what we interact with. It's who we interact with.
Yeah, but that's just dressing. Window dressing.
Oh, jeez.
I mean, I want to say ultimately my true self is Jesus himself. And it's not that I'm saying I'm Jesus, but my whole life has been quickened by the Holy Spirit. So I'm this new creation, but in Jesus, not apart from him. So I can't imagine a self apart from being knit together with Jesus.
So developing yourself, is that a concept for you? Is that like the coming off of the petals and moving into, or you don't develop self?
I don't think so.
So self is something that
self is self.
Explore.
It's that core, and then everything else is just like little manifestations or facets of that person.
Essence.
Yes. Like a jewel almost. And each of those little roles or things I do is ways people are
able to see self.
But they're not seeing myself, they're seeing that facet.
Exactly. And okay, and then these days we get to project a persona online. Yet, well, we get to do it in like just the way that I'm dressed today. Like we've chosen, I chose these clothes to like represent myself today. You did the same, right? But even more so online so is that online thing also a leaf or a petal?
It's a projection of the self. It's not the true self.
So we could also add to that.
Oh yeah. You could have more than 1,000 petals. I have many roles.
Oh man.
And I think it's worthwhile doing that deconstructing. But I've learned to sit at peace, realize I personally don't believe I can know my true self from myself. It's something
through someone in community.
They'll show me aspects of myself I can't see,
right,
and I'll get to manifest. But I think only God knows who I really am.
Oh man. So then all of this expectation I place on myself to know myself is just anxiety.
I think it's a worthwhile
pursuit.
Yes, but
you can't get to the end of it.
I don't think so.
Okay,
but I think it's important to be aware of all those.
Okay, right. So that's a worthwhile pursuit. Learn if the pedal.
Oh, that's Socrates, right? Know thyself. That's like the beginning.
Yeah, but
it's the meanest thing to tell people.
It's you can only know the petals, and you can never get to true essence of yourself.
I'm not saying never, but I think it either has to be like revealed, or we have to be. I don't know how we can get into a state where we can see ourselves.
One day,
Maybe.
maybe. We spend so much time trying to figure out the self. We spend so much time and effort projecting,
But in our culture,
curating ourselves.
it's so much about what we do, right? And so I'm really trying to get people to focus on who we are, about the being piece.
And that's different to you than the self.
No, it's, I think when we're, as to the degree we can, we're at peace and rest with ourselves, we can be ourselves. But when we're trying to put on all these different appearances or appeasements or modes, we alienate ourselves from ourselves.
Is that
and from other people.
Is that a false self then that you're talking about?
Yes. Well, it's like a role or a show. It's like putting on a performance. Like, oh, I'm at work, so here's my work hat, here's my work self.
Yeah.
I'm at home with my loved, this is my family self.
Yeah.
At church, here's my devotion self.
Yeah.
I want to have an integrated self.
Absolutely.
I don't want to have,
So that you're the same self, you're the same person.
and it doesn't mean I don't dress differently or comport myself differently in different venues.
Sure.
But I want to be,
Because you have to play that role.
I want to be me wherever I go.
You want to be you no matter what role you're playing?
Well, I love masks, and I think they're teaching tools.
Okay.
But if I remember telling my students once, I said, I have given you a semester of hundreds of different masks. But at the end of the class, I can take my mask off.
Mm-hmm.
Can you?
Oh,
Because they were all wearing masks too.
right.
Either trying to wow that girl
But they
or
didn't
impress
know
her.
that they were wearing
Right.
masks.
And that's very dangerous when you confuse your mask or those petals with you.
Yeah.
Because it's not.
Right.
They facet.
Well, and so we'll look at somebody online and we'll just think that that version of themselves, that petal is the full version of themselves, right? And so we just think like we know that.
Well, that would be very foolish.
It would be, but it happens. People do it all the time.
And people generally only like most people generally only like to post the positives.
Yeah.
You do have your negative Nellies out there that
Sure.
like to wallow in the grief and misery that they somehow encounter every day.
And they feel comfortable in that.
Yes, they're safe.
Oh man. Is there, so it's not a developing of self. It's a revealing of self, and it's working through. Well, can you put on a pedal? Can you put on a roll when you need to, and you just know it's there? So
I hope so.
well, some people don't know it's there, but I talk about a fully, if you have an integrated identity framework, then you know which roles to put on, which ones to take off, but it has to be integrated into this. Like, okay, I'm putting on this role. I'm playing this role. I have to be this person for this particular setting. And I think there's something natural and normal about that.
Did you ever read Herman Hesse, this book, Steppenwolf?
No, tell me.
Okay, so he wrote this book after he had been doing therapy with Carl Jung.
Okay.
So wonderful.
Yeah.
And the main character of the book is called Harry Haller, and he was this bourgeoisie German businessman, I think. And when he'd go out to social events or parties, people would say stuff, and he would always be polite and proper because he's got this ideal German polite etiquette thing. But when he would get home, he had another person living inside of him called the Steppenwolf. Okay. It was like a ravenous wolf from the steppes. And he's like, I can't believe you let those people talk to you like that. You knew they were just full of it. Why didn't you stand up for yourself? You're just such a cow. And then he's like, we can't act like that in public. And so the wolf would berate him for being polite. But then if they were out and the wolf came out and was like mean and petty and cruel, when they'd get home, Harry Haller would beat the wolf and say, you can't behave like that. I'm going to lose my job. I'm going to lose that relationship. And so he has this conflict. And then towards the end of the book, spoiler alert, he goes to this place called the Magic Theater. And there's this long hallway with all these doors. And each door he opens is another iteration of himself.
Yes.
It's not just the bourgeoisie and
Right.
the wolf.
Right.
He has all these selves.
Right.
And the problem is, I think, when we don't have one overriding self to keep all the other
In check. Yeah.
that's when you could get multiple personality disorder.
That's
Dissociative
yeah.
disorder. But
Yeah.
I think we all, and that was part of my study. Do we have a self, no self, or many self?
Right. Right. In my dissertation, I talked about the multiple personas and the multiple selves that we have.
And we didn't even define our terms.
Well, I'm not a philosopher, so
we always have to define our terms. Otherwise, we could be talking past each other for an hour.
No, but I think we're on track. I think we're saying the same things. But in order to have multiple personas and multiple
I would call
versions,
define the self as our essential nature.
essence.
Beyond, as I'm fine with essence, beyond the physical, that thing that animates this body.
Interestingly enough, when in my dissertation research on adolescent identity formation in online space, it was about essence or your self or whatever being online, a disembodied, asynchronous interaction that I can have with you at any time.
And you can edit it.
Exactly.
Which is so.
I can. And it just helped me to understand. It just gave me context for like what it is that we're doing online, because that's what I was writing about. And because I think like, yeah, I think at first we were confused about like, well, I'm playing this role or I'm being this. And then I found, that verse in Luke 6 that says, out of the good that a man stores in his heart comes out good things, and out of evil that a man stores in his heart comes out evil things, and out of the abundance of the heart, you post on social media. and then I had a friend tell me once, well, when you're done with this research, you need to help me like with this whole Facebook, like online kind of thing. And I'm like, well, I could help you right now. Facebook is here. Instagram is in your heart. The screen just happens to be the portal or the interface that to help us see that. You know what I mean?
And that's a really good point. And I have intentionally, because of the divisive times we're living in.
Yeah.
And I have friends on both ends of the spectrum, socially, politically, religiously, or non-religiously.
Yeah.
And I wanted at least my Facebook page to be like a sanctuary in the storm, where people could just come and see beautiful things.
Yeah.
Like nature, or
love those
positive meditative things, or something I've been learning. And even though I care very much about what's happening to the country and theology and doctrine and religion, I have other platforms if I want to do that,
to explore that.
People can seek it out if they want more of a point counterpoint.
Yeah.
Really getting down, because there's a place for that too.
Yeah.
But I needed my Facebook to be a place of peace and sanctuary. And fortunately, once I discovered the snooze button, I've been able to help my feed stay healthy and keep me from getting spun.
And mute people,
because I don't want to disassociate entirely, but I do need to give people like little breaks while they're working through.
Yeah. No, that's good.
That they're sharing with the world.
Right. Right.
I'm happy to talk with them if they want to message me privately.
Right.
But I'm not doing it in a public melee that's going to bring all these people in and get everyone's blood pressure up.
Yeah.
People deep friending each other. That mess.
Okay. I want to ask you, like, when Dante wrote his Inferno, right?
So,
you know we're going to talk about Dante today. Well, when he wrote his Inferno, like, people had categories for physical space. They also had categories for spiritual space, which I don't think we necessarily have those categories. But everything online, the disembodied, asynchronous, is very much spiritual space. And like, even though we live far away from each other. Like Facebook is the it's the town center. Like I know what people are doing and what they're eating. Like you know what I mean? Like it allows us for that physical and spiritual space. Like what happened? What happened? Give us a little history lesson. What happened in history where we lost that sensibility, or we lost like the ability to see spiritual online space? And I don't think people would necessarily see the online thing as a spiritual space, even though I think it is. But like, how did we lose that? How did we lose that? Because there was a time where everybody lived in both of those spaces, like, and I say that, and I don't know that I know what that means.
That's why I became a history major in my undergrad
Oh, really?
for that question.
No way.
Because my whole life I felt like I was born in the wrong time, and I didn't feel like I thought or saw the world like my contemporaries.
Right.
And I was like, what happened?
Yeah.
And I I'm gonna give Thomas Aquinas credit.
Okay.
I I've grown to love him,
Okay.
but for certain reasons. But I think he opened the window when he reintroduced Aristotelian realism and physicalism, and then mixed it with Christian theology.
Okay.
That's what kind of ushered in the age of reason, and then the Renaissance, the Enlightenment, all
Right.
from that, bringing
This
that
away.
idealism, or
Yeah.
spiritualism back with the physicalism.
Mm.
And then over time, the spiritual just kind of got nudged out of the picture.
Interestingly enough, I used Aquinas to talk about my research and like that, and describing those two kinds of spaces, because I think he does a great job of explaining. Yeah, I think he does a good job of explaining those two different kind of spaces and how we can live in both of those spaces at the same time.
That's what I love about Joshua program. It's the spirit and the clouds.
Yeah, yeah.
They're still in touch with the earth and physical needs of people or communities, but they also understand the spiritual element and nurturing what I would say the self is spirit.
Yeah.
But we live in a material physical world.
Lately I've been thinking through the architecture of the church. I don't know if I've ever had this conversation with you. About 20 years ago, I went to Italy to this little pieve, and a pieve is like, uh, it was a church with baptistry. It was like the main one, so they could have all these other churches, and it was always central to life. It was like in the middle of town. All of life revolved around the pieve. And this art historian kind of walked us through like just the experience of going to a church 1,000 years ago. And then, well, I'll just walk you through it. Like he goes right in front of this church, there was probably a cemetery, and the cemetery was like a reminder of like your life on earth is temporal, right? And then you get to the door, and there'd be this little thing of water, and you would do your thing. It was a symbolic of your decision to follow Christ. You'd walk into the church, and there'd be these paintings on the wall that just walk you through, the scriptures and the great hall of witnesses, that says you can do this. And always in the front was a fresco, a painting, a sculpture, something that just in the magnificence of God, right? And in these churches, the lectern was always elevated, but to the side, never central, right? God was always central. And like you would put like the man preaching, like off to the side, like elevated again, because he was preaching the word, but never central. And then, and then he walked us through all this, and I was like, man, this guy's like articulating like the gospel of the kingdom, like in a way I've never ever learned. And then he said, and then there was a door to the side, and he said, if you go through that door, you would enter the cloister, you would enter the garden, you know? And then I started thinking through like the sanctuary was always the place where you develop the disciplines of the mind, like thinking, logic, reflection. Like you learn how to think in that space. And then you would go into the garden, the cloister, and develop the disciplines of the heart, meditation, silence, prayer, like those kind of disciplines. And I think like he was saying like a couple hundred years later, like churches were only built with the sanctuary, no cloister, no garden, no space for the spiritual stuff. And so like we got like the knowledge and then we have like the understanding, we have thinking, we learn how to think through things, but it never got down into the heart because that went off and became the monasteries, like separate from culture and separate from the world. And then fast forward 1,000 years,
Utilitarian buildings and
well, we only train this and really only the one side. You know what I mean? And so like,
well, for the ancient Greeks, I meant to start with this before I jumped right into Hinduism, but they believed in a tripartite soul.
okay,
You had the logos, which was like reason, analytical reason, logic. You had the cardia, which was the heart, the passion, desire. And that's kind of almost like that hairy collar and the wolf, right?
yeah,
The logos versus the cardia, or Apollo versus Dionysius in Nietzsche's view. But then they believe there was a higher part of the soul called the Noose.
yes,
And that was like first principles, like our knowledge of perfection, like what it means, holiness, good and evil, things that we should not be able to know through human experience. Because I've never seen perfection
right,
or holiness.
right.
But I understand the concept.
Yeah,
And
it's
eternality.
not in me.
I'm a finite being
Right.
who has a concept of eternity. And I believe that's what fell in the fall. Our noose was broken. And in the New Testament, it talks about be therefore transformed, metamorphosed by the renewal of your noose.
Yes.
That's the word, that higher part. And so I don't feel fully transformed by any means, but I feel so different. Like little by little, my noose is being healed, regenerated.
Yeah.
A new mind.
And only one day, eventually one day,
Yes.
you'll get to see.
But I try to be gentle with myself. That's something I'm learning too. Because I'm very patient with other people.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm just like, so you need to treat yourself like you treat others. Stop being so mean to yourself.
Right. Right.
You're also a beginner on the path of God.
Well, right on, man. Thank you for spending the time. We've gone 27 minutes.
We are all saplings in the garden of God. But we will grow into great trees someday.
Yeah, someday. Thank you for sharing.
Talk. I love you, Liv.
Just some thoughts. If people wanted to learn more about some of your ideas, and actually you post a lot on YouTube. What the channel is.
Yes, you can find me at Darkwater Hermit. One word. It's my family name. Blackburn means out of dark waters, and I'm a bit of a hermit.
And you got hundreds of videos on there.
Full courses. And that's both my YouTube and my TikTok channel are Darkwater Hermit. If you want to find me and send me a message if you want to converse.
Well, thank you for taking the time, my friend.